Howdy, peeps. You're from the neighborhood Monomokos here, speaking to you on the topic at hand, specifically about just war theory or justifiable war theory. I will tell you that I have. I don't want to go over too much of what has already been written, as I've written quite a lot, and of course, I have to thank Galena for helping make sense of it all, and I think she did a very good job. But I do want to say that the seven criteria for just war are there. They can be distilled down to four, and I'll read them what they are. First one is aggression. The damage inflicted by the aggressor must be lasting, grave, and certain. We can think in modern terms of clear and present danger. Let's say an ICBM is heading for Washington, D.C. I mean, you don't have time to call Congress, but you should call Congress otherwise to make the war more just as a as a general rule. Okay, the next one is diplomacy. Diplomacy must have failed. Okay, if it has failed, then the justifiability of your war of military action rises. Um, then there has to be the prospect of success. Is there a possibility that by going to war, that this is not going to be something that's going to drag on forever, like the Hundred Years' War, which I admit didn't last for 100 years. I mean, there wasn't 100 years of bellicosity. There was just, a few years of fighting here, a few months of fighting there, some truces, but the whole shebang lasted for 100 years. Anyway, the idea is that war needs to be measured. It doesn't need to last forever. And there are reasons for that, and I think you can guess one of them. I'll just tell you one thing right now. The military-industrial complex likes wars, likes these forever wars. We were in war. We were at war in Afghanistan for 20 years, and if you had bought stock in armaments companies, Raytheon, General Dynamics, General Electric, Martin Marietta, Lockheed Martin. You go down the line. If you'd bought stock in any of those companies back in, let's say, 2001, by 2021, when we left Afghanistan, you'd be a fairly wealthy fellow. So let's not forget about that. The idea that there are armaments industries who provoke war are lessen the justifiability of war. Let's never forget that. By the way, I'm not a pacifist. Okay, I'm just a well-armed hawk, or I'm sorry, a well-armed dove. Excuse me. Okay, the last thing is proportionality, and the use of arms does not produce evils which are greater than the original aggression. Now, um, again, please feel free to read what Gail and I wrote up above. I think it speaks for itself, and it's measured and it's sober. And we're not hawks, but neither are we peaceniks. We realize that there is a necessity for war at times, just as there is a necessity for other violent actions like surgery or police forces. Anyway, I highly recommend the book, which it's at the bottom, or actually at the bottom, by Father Alexander F.C. Webster about the virtue of war, and it's quite a good book, and the, there is he does expand on war not being a necessary evil but a lesser good. And if memory serves, it's been a long time since I've read that book. He There is something called just war as opposed to justifiable war. In the if I'm correct, if I remember correctly, in the West, especially since the time of St. Augustine, there was a idea of a just war, whereas in the East we never had that concept, but we had what was called justifiable war. Maybe there are distinctions with differences there. Maybe there are distinctions without differences. Regardless, get the book. It's a good book, and I highly recommend it. Okay, so now let's get to the topic at hand. There are three major areas of conflict which we are heading into. One is Eastern Europe, in other words, the Ukraine. The other one is um, the Middle East, and um, in other words, Gaza. And then, unfortunately, we're planning one in the Indo-Pacific, specifically China. And what puzzles me, perplexes me, and rather and angers me is that when it comes to the third area, the Indo-Pacific, there's no reason for us to be there. I mean, um, according to the State Department, according to official American doctrine, Taiwan is a part of China. Now, I'm not very happy about that, being a Cold Warrior and anti-Marxist, but the government I voted for and that I am part of has believed for the better part of, oh gosh, 30 years now, that Taiwan is indeed part of China. Okay, so why are we trying to aggravate war? Why are we trying to provoke war there? I mean, we've just admitted it. We got to get ready for 2025, folks. That's what we're going to do it. This is insane. Okay, this is, if nothing else, this is telegraphing to the Chinese. You better get your ducks up. You got to get your ducks in a row, line them up because we're coming after you. And so they'll be waiting for us. I mean, this simply defies all military logic. Not only that, it is giving the Chinese more ammunition, so to speak, to keep on helping the Russians in their special military operation, and now in the Middle East. And I'm not going to. Anything can happen in a hot war. As I can't remember who said it, but in war the enemy gets a vote. This thing in the Middle East can turn sour. It's already sour. Excuse me. God forgive me. Can get really bad for us really quick. And I'm talking about the United States in general. All it takes is one aircraft carrier to be torpedoed by this generation Exocet missile. Excuse me. And the spectacle of seeing 5,000 sailors and Marines drowning in the Red Sea is not going to be something that is going to be very, very popular, nor should it be. Excuse me. Okay, so the Chinese now, because we have telegraphed our bellicosity, in other words, we're provoking them, have every reason to keep on throwing sand in our faces in the Middle East, and to in and to increase the likelihood of wider conflict. By expanding this wider conflict, it's going to make our ability to go after China in 2025, our target date, more difficult. So why are we doing this? I can't explain it. Regardless, it's immoral. It is bloody immoral. It's immoral to provoke somebody for no good reason at all, and that's what we're doing. Um, Now let's talk specifically about the Middle East, especially the Gaza conflict, the conflict in Israel between Gaza. This is I've taken a lot of heat for this, and I think unjustifiably so, in comparing the comparative humanity of the way the Russians are fighting their special military operation as opposed to the Israelis. The Israelis just went berserk. They went all biblical. I mean, as as soon as Hamas um, breached the barrier back on October 7th, which I won't go into too much detail. I think there was something fishy about that because it took 7 hours for the Israelis to respond, which it's right on their doorstep. I mean, if a man breaks into your house, you're not going to wait an hour and say, "Excuse me, sir, while I put on the boxing gloves and we're going to fight again," according to the Marquess of Queensberry rules. No, you're going to grab your shotgun, your 3-08, and just plug him right then. There's seconds matter. Okay, so I don't understand why the Israelis had to wait hours to respond. But then when they did in a very horrific manner, and in a way that even if they were justified because of the initial aggression, which I grant them that, the proportionality or point number four is it's disproportionate. It's not moral at all. They have literally destroyed Gaza. They have leveled it into a parking lot, and they have killed tens of thousands of civilians. I think we're up to 30,000 now. Originally on October 8th, they said there were 40 Israeli beheaded babies. That's been debunked. Let's say that was so. Okay, that's horrible. Now there are 15,000 dead Palestinian babies and children. Okay, does not one see? And I've always been pro-Israeli, so for those of you who think I'm waving the Palestinian flag here, I'm not. Okay, I'm not doing that. All I can say is that the demons that the Israelis have unleashed by this bloodlust, this revenge taking, is going to be horrible, not only now for the people involved, but for the future. Where are those 2 million people going to go? Okay, I mean to Egypt. Egypt doesn't want them. Egypt doesn't need them. Okay, they were perfectly fine there. They could have been treated better by the Israelis, but the Israelis kept them on near starvation rations, and as far as their utilities are concerned, again, very meager. Okay, if the Israelis want to commit genocide, just be open about it, because that's what this is. If it's not genocide, it's ethnic cleansing. Now, I'm going to go into a little bit of give myself a little bit of trouble here and say, well, maybe ethnic cleansing is better than genocide. Um, if you want to have that argument, we can have it. I myself am the product of ethnic cleansing. My mother's people were from Asia Minor, specifically an island off the coast of Asia Minor that the Turks took over and ethnically cleansed little by little my relatives, my mother's relatives. My father, of course, was from Messenia, Greece, the Peloponnese. He met my mother, and here I am. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but you see what I'm saying. So ethnic cleansing is I guess you could say it's better than being genocided. If so, and we're going to have to come to that conclusion because that's exactly what's happening in Gaza right now. The Israelis are not going to stop until every last Palestinian is uh, is is eradicated from that area. Okay, if that's the case, then we're going to have to say, well, you know what? Then maybe we Americans don't need to apologize for the Trail of Tears or the Indian Removal Act of 1836, in which tens of thousands of Cherokee, Choctaw, Seminole, and so on were forcibly removed from their native lands in the South to what is now Oklahoma. We bear that as a stigma, as a sign of shame. Uh, you know, we forget that 12 million Germans who lived in what is now Poland were ethnically cleansed after World War II and forced to march westward and to be integrated into the German homeland. And and that was not a, a pleasant thing. Although I guess all things being equal, it was better than being massacred by the Soviet army. Interestingly enough, the British back in the 17th century forced tens of thousands of French Canadians to march away from Quebec and to go down eventually to Louisiana, which there was already a thriving French colony there. And because they came from Acadia in Quebec, they became known as Acadians or Cajuns. Okay. Anyway, I'm not saying that it was a, a walk in the park to be ethnically cleansed from Asia Minor or from the Danzig corridor or from Quebec or from the south. It wasn't. Thousands of people died. But that's what's going on in Gaza right now, or it's going to result in the complete removal, the almost complete and total removal of the Palestinians from the Gaza. So we need to keep that in mind, and maybe we need to. I I don't want to go any further than that. Excuse me, I'm being called, and so anyway, okay. So now we go to the SMO, and I'm going to end here. By contrast, the Russians have been fighting very, very, very humanely. Okay, and the numbers just say it. And they are not looking for land or conquest. They don't. The last thing they want is to govern Kiev. Okay, they do want to take back those traditional Russian areas. Okay, fine. Okay, but they didn't provoke that war. We in the West did. So we are aggressors, and that cannot be forgotten. And unfortunately, we're aggressors also in the Middle East because we have not told Netanyahu to call off the dogs. Instead, what we're doing is we're encouraging him. And of course, we're being the aggressors in China, in the Indo-Pacific, aren't we? We've said as much. War in 2025. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Pax Robiscum. And let's try to love one another, really, if we could.